Good Up is our space to talk about those experiences in life we didn't know we all had in common. We're the after work happy hour conversation with your best friend.
You good up fine, like, hello.
The place where you bring up the hard parts of life, the ones that made you laugh, and the things that made you who you are. Because who said becoming good up wasn't a little bit uncomfortable? Stay tuned for more information about this week's episode. Hey, beautiful people. Welcome back to another episode of the Good Up podcast, also known as... Whose favorite podcast is it this week?
Your daddy and his best friend.
I've said your mom, your dad, your brother, everybody's favorite podcast. We have the episode, we're recording the episode today that I have been waiting to record since I started this podcast. But for some reason, could never find anyone who had a valid perspective on this topic, or besides me, who could actually speak to what I want to talk about today. So I'm so excited because I follow this wonderful guest. His name is Khaliq, and I'm going to let him introduce himself, but I found him on TikTok, and I don't often find openly bisexual Black men on social media who speak to their experiences. He speaks on a number of things on his TikTok, but I rarely find, again, openly bisexual Black men openly speaking on the bisexual experience. So we have this Let's Talk About Sex series, but for me, Let's Talk About Sex is bigger than just sex and
the act of sex. Yeah.
So we haven't done a good enough job, in my view, of talking about things like sexuality, gender identity, things like that on the podcast. But for me, it's because I need to have people who can speak on their own perspectives. I don't just speak from the outside looking in. So anyway, say all that to say today's episode is about bisexuality. I'm the resident bisexual on the podcast, but I wanted to make sure that we also have the Black male perspective on this episode. So with that, Khaliq, please introduce yourself to the Good Up audience. Tell us who you are, what you do, what you about, and welcome.
What's up? I'm Khaliq. I'm a senior, finally finishing this degree at Cornell University. Awful school, but great opportunity. You know, that's the Ivy League in a nutshell. I'm a human development major. So really just study people. And I think even before I got into that shit, you know, like just the experience of being Black and queer is just like its own experience, and like nobody talks about it. So being able to finally have the language to speak about my experiences and like have people understand it, I think is like the most important part of like this like 4 years of hell. So.
And I love how you said like, oh, like bad school.
Like, no, because they'd be like, oh, Ivy League, and I'm like, no, they're like racist. Like,
like let's be clear.
I went to Syracuse for grad, which is not an Ivy League school, but people were like, ooh, Syracuse, and I was like, girl, it's trash. Don't.
Like, it's just a degree. Like,
It's just a hyped up, you know, school, but whatever. But congratulations, because that's dope. And
hello.
Yeah, finishing a degree in 2022 when the world is going to shit is like awesome. So congratulations to you on that. I think what I want to start with is, did you, in your experience, did you have to come out? I'm not going to ask when did you come out, because some people don't even have to come out. So did you have to announce to the world or share with anyone that you were bisexual? Is this something you realized later on in life? Was this early on?
Definitely something I realized later on in life, because, you know, I definitely always liked women. And that was always the interesting thing, because I know a lot of my gay friends, like they said like they knew they liked men from like jump. It did not start happening to me till middle school. But coming from a Caribbean household, like especially my dad, super homophobic, like there was no ability to even like accept that as an answer. So it took me a long time to even accept that I was there having those thoughts. But did I have to come out? I feel like in a way it was sort of inevitable. And this is more in part because of how emotionally expressive my mother was. Like she's very big on love. And my dad is, he's a Caribbean dad. So he's not
sad.
He's not super affectionate, not super loving. And, you know, he thinks like being the provider is like, you know, like the biggest thing he has to be. And so because he wasn't super like present and, you know, like my foundations and stuff, like I was very emotionally expressive as a kid, and I've always been very emotionally expressive.
Yeah.
I was getting along with women pretty well. And so when I got to high school, I always had like I had a lot of female friends as well. And then it was to the point where I'm the type I'm like a lover boy. So like if I had like a crush on a girl, I'd be like obsessed with her. I'd be like, you know, the unrequited love thing, like writing poems like in my book and type shit. But like that wasn't it back then. So like
it's still not it to some people, unfortunately.
if you had all female friends and you were very expressive and you were a Black man at that, like it was over. Like you could not be straight. Like there's just no way. But back then I actually went to a school that didn't have a super amount of Black people. In New York City, like it's mostly people of color, but like my school is mostly like Hispanics and Asians. I had like I think it was like 8% Black people. In my first year, I had a lot more Black people in my classes, but then they started putting me in honors and AP classes, and you know how they do that. So I was maybe one of like 5 or 6 when we got to 10th grade, but it wasn't actually until end of 9th grade that I realized really started to accept that I like men, and you can thank Jamal for that. There was an episode of Empire, and he had bet his man over his dad's desk, and I was like, yeah. So
I love that.
That was like the bisexual awakening of like, oh, I like
so
this.
You just proved what all the homophobes been saying. We need to stop letting
the gay agenda is working. It's
gay agenda is real.
It's working overtime. Like, wow.
Yeah, when people be like, oh, don't stop putting that gay shit on TV, and other people be like, oh, that didn't make anybody gay. I'm like, it didn't make me gay, but it made me think about some shit.
It was nice to have that representation, I bet. I think that's really what it was seeing like, oh, wait, what I've been feeling is real, and it's something that I want. Yeah.
It is wild, too, because like it's so not talked about in Black families, and like everybody knows in your family, if you have like a gay child, you have a gay like family member, they just don't talk about it. And so the funny thing is to not see that on TV is like maybe it just doesn't exist. And like to the extent where like my house is super femphobic, like I wasn't very feminine growing up. Like I was super expressive, I was super, nice, I had a lot of like female friends, but like feminine, like that was something that like wasn't really in my vocabulary, something I'm still exploring now. And so like to see like especially a lot of my gay friends and a lot of gay men in general who like were exclusively gay, exclusively feminine early on, and that's something you can't just change. Like, and then seeing that on screen with Jamal, it was like yeah, this makes sense. Like that kind of violence, I could definitely see myself like happening to me if I was feminine back then. Not to say like I wanted to be, or not to say that I like couldn't be, but if I was, like I know it would be like Jamal. But even then, like I didn't really start like telling people until like the beginning of sophomore year. And this is actually what had happened. Sophomore year, I told one of my best friends at the time. She was a sophomore, and she told a few of her friends, and a few of her friends told a few friends, and by next week everybody was asking me. So it was just like, yeah, I guess. And then that was it. And it didn't even it took me a really long time to really like realize that I was like being outed, but like she was really close to me. She was the first person I actually met that was bi. That was actually right around the time during the Supreme Court legalizing gay marriage in the US. And so like she was so like proud about herself. She actually wrote one of my essays about her, my college essays. And like that's when I realized it was a thing, because like gay, it was always gay and straight. Like, and then I met her, like, so it's just so funny to have somebody who was so inspiring to me also be so detrimental to my development.
Yeah.
But like everything happens for a reason. I've been able to have these conversations for so long because I've been out for so long. But being out was not easy. It was not, in high school especially.
Yeah, the concept of being outed, I think so many straight people don't get like how horrible it is, because it's like nobody came into your house and like walked up to your parents and was like, "Hey, your daughter's straight. Like, by the way, she likes men."
Right.
So for you to just take it upon yourself to share that information about something so personal to somebody else with everybody, knowing that it could bring them harm, especially for Black men, it can literally bring them harm to be outed in our community. Like it's crazy. It's a part of the reason, even though my experience is slightly like different, it is different as a bisexual woman, but like I did not come out or just formally say, "Hey, I'm bisexual," until 2 years ago, Deidre? It was like a blog post.
About 2 years. Yeah, it was like 2 or 3 years ago.
Like,
3 is a stretch.
Let me just write about it. Fuck it. And I was already like in a long-term relationship with a man. Like I came out when I knew I was in a sort of safe, accepting space.
Mm-hmm.
And it was because, it was because that like Caribbean upbringing, right? Because I had seen my family be so like negative towards homosexuality or, you know, of queerness of any kind. Like Caribbean people are like horrible to queer people. We know everybody back home has like that gay family member who they accept or they're a part of the family, but they talk about them in like a very separate way.
Yeah,
right?
and they make them sound like some sort of a plague is upon them, like almost like, it's really weird. Yeah,
so
it's like mental illness to them. It's really like, wow, like there's something wrong with that boy.
That one is touched. Like, that one is touched.
Yeah, like this person is somehow like, you know, they special. They're not like, they're unique. They're the one person in the family who just went left. And I'm just like, if you only knew how many more people in this family are gay. But okay, like I have an openly gay first cousin, right? And she is not just openly gay, she is a stud. She has always dressed in a very masculine way. And my family treats, like, they love her to her face. But the way that they talk about her, so they separate her, the person, and her gayness, right? They'll talk about her like, oh yeah, she was at the family reunion thing, but let her bring a girlfriend to the family. Then it's all of a sudden, oh, she brought that girl, and you know, she's a lesbian and she's this. So imagine knowing, because I've known I was bisexual for a long time. Okay, I had that similar awakening, but it was like cartoons and shit, right? Like I was like, why Miss Incredible so thick? Like, like why do I enjoy this? So just noticing things from when I was little, like I knew that I have just straight up equal attraction to boys and girls, men and women. Like there was no difference for me, right? And then when I started getting older, I kind of was like, okay, well, I can't talk about this openly because I noticed none of my other friends feel this way about other women. They only feel this way about guys. So I obviously, you know, kept that to myself. But one of my first, like, I guess, experiences with women was actually with a very close friend of mine when I was younger. I don't know that she's out. I don't know that she's bi, but we liked each other and we expressed that like towards each other, and it was very private, but I knew I was bi when I was young. Still, there was never that space, right? Because I knew my mother loves me to death. I don't know that my mother would love having a bisexual daughter who was out at that age, at that time. My dad, absolutely fucking not. Like, Pentecostal, Caribbean, super
you
Christian.
name it.
No, it was not gonna happen. So yeah. But Deidre, I have a question for you because I don't want you to be left out of the conversation as the
don't feel left out at all.
As the resident straight person. Has there ever been a period of time where you questioned your sexuality?
I don't think I've ever questioned my sexuality, but every day I say, wow, I wish I could choose my sexuality, because if I could, I would absolutely choose to be gay. Like, I would never choose to be attracted to these straight men. Like, so I've never questioned it. I'll say there have been times where I fantasize about like threesomes, but then I think of all the bodily fluids involved and I'm like, no, ew, can't do it. Too many people at once. I can't do that. And I also just can't see myself being sexual with a woman, but I wish I could, because Lord knows I would be so much happier in life.
So you are the proof that there is no way that this is a choice, because
I wish too. Because
yes, I listen, that's my argument. Anytime I've been involved with somebody romantically, especially who said anything, you know, men, especially straight men, straight Black men at that, not all, because you know how y'all like to tussle, you know, they love to somehow bring up somehow it always comes up. Their homophobia always comes creeping out. And my simple response to them is, I don't think you understand how homosexuality or bisexuality or any of that stuff works. Because if you did, you would know that they're born this way. And I can assure you that if I could choose my sexuality, I would not be attracted to you, sir. Like, I've told men, like, if I could choose my sexuality, I would not choose straight. Why? Why would I set myself up for failure like that? What? No. Yeah, and that just ends the conversation right there. I also find myself wondering, and I always ask them this too, not even just men, but just people who don't understand it. Why do you think anybody would choose a life of oppression? Like, we already can't choose the fact that we're Black. We can't choose the fact that we're women or what have you. Why would anybody choose to be oppressed? Because gay people, bisexual, all the members of the community go through hell. Why would they choose that for themselves? You don't think everybody would be in a closet, or gayness wouldn't exist if you could choose your sexuality?
But again, if we could choose, why would we date straight men?
Why would we date men?
Why we date? Like, y'all are not the cream of the crop here. in my opinion, bisexual men are, but you know, I mean, I am married to a straight man. I want to be open with this, and I love my husband very much. But bisexual men really are up there
top
for me.
Top tier, yeah, for sure.
Because and this is another layer of the conversation, and Khaliq, I definitely want to hear your thoughts on this. A big part, so we talk a lot about straight men when it comes to homophobia and biphobia, right? But a big population of people who perpetuate biphobia are straight women. In our community, it's straight Black women.
Oh, yes, let's talk about it, honey.
And I really want to talk about that because for me, a part of the reason I haven't been out is because like that stereotype, right? That bisexual women are promiscuous. Bisexual women are not monogamous. For Black bisexual men, I feel it's even worse.
It is, yeah.
You're straight. That's like,
yeah, y'all can't be bi. The minute you express any type of attraction to a man, your attraction to a woman doesn't count. Like it disappears. So have you experienced that, like, and I know you probably have, but have you experienced that like straight up biphobia, like those types of conversations?
It's like the actual funniest thing because in high school, that like again, like I was in a lot of honors AP classes and they didn't have a lot of Black people in there. So there wasn't a lot of Black people to like, but I was out since sophomore early. So like for the most part, almost throughout high school, people did not like girls did not like me. It was like so wild. Like they just saw me as like the gay best friend. And it wasn't until like the last year, actually I had a boyfriend my last year from high school. And we dated a pretty long time. When we ended and then like when we were graduating, like these girls started telling me how they had a crush on me. It's like it was literally a stigma to like a bi man at that time. So it was like that was senior year of high school, it was 2018. We've made a little bit more progress since then. Then I get to college. And it's even worse because like now I'm around Black people, but then also around Black people who have the same beliefs, same like values, same things that we've all grown up with. Even if you don't have them yourself, you've grown up around them. And so it was so like strange because like even especially in Cornell, like being an attractive Black man, like you're like on everybody's radar. And like niggas do not be cute. Like let's just be real. They like do not. I can tell if a nigga is cute, and most of them do not. So they be paying attention to me. But then they hear me speak, and it's like, I was giving friend, and I'm like, okay. And I can tell you right now, maybe half of the Black women there at my school that have like had those thoughts, or some of them said they would never date a bi man have hit on me. So that's the real funny shift that like I saw happen. And then I just had to realize I don't give a fuck what you say. Like I really don't. And it took so long to get there because for the longest time I was looking for their validation. And that was the issue because at the time, their only spotlight was on these straight men that were treating them like shit. And I was like, why would I want to be like a straight man that they treat them like shit? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me. And so I just stopped being that.
Damn.
I'm glad you brought up the fact that they were out here caping for the straight men who were treating them like shit. Because
me too.
That's my question for biphobic straight Black women. Like,
yeah,
first of all, I need people to know that your preferences are homophobic. The reason you don't want to date my bi men is like it's all rooted in homophobia.
It's
right?
always homophobic. I don't think I've ever met a straight, especially we're speaking on Black people, right? I don't think I've ever met a straight Black woman who, when faced with the question, would you be with a bisexual man? They always pretty it up with the politically correct answers.
The homophobia jumps the fuck out.
Yeah, I don't have anything against people in that community and blase, but I just couldn't see myself being with one. Okay, why? And then when you really back them into a corner, I've heard some really vile things come out of the mouths of people. And I'm just like, you just don't know how it works, and that's fine. Yeah. So why, like, just say you don't understand and move on. But to then demonize people and make it like, oh, a lot of women, they like to say, oh, I can't compete with a man. And it's like, you're not meant to compete with men.
This is the issue that goes back to bisexuality, right? That idea of promiscuity. So they always associate it with sex, right? Sex and sexuality are two different things. There are people who are attracted to a certain sex that it has nothing to do with the sexual act at all, right? So it goes back to that idea that bisexual people are promiscuous. So there's that assumption, like you said, those women say, oh, I can't compete with a man. Why, if you are in a monogamous relationship, would you have to compete with another man?
Exactly.
Why would you have to? It doesn't mean that just because I like both people that I'm fucking both people at the same time. That's a lot of work, okay?
That's another thing too, because you will be in a monogamous relationship with your straight man.
Say it
20 times
and making babies.
Yep. Right? And making babies.
Let's talk about it.
Babies. We know how widely held that shit is. Like I know you're joking.
What?
Every single black man you look up to has at least 2-3 baby mamas, has at least cheated on their wife once, maybe divorced twice. Like, come on now.
But even then, like, that's such a good point. Like, y'all talk about, oh, I don't want to compete with somebody else. Just because this person is bisexual, that automatically means they're going to be fucking me and this other person at the same time. No. Like, you've dated straight people who were fucking other people at the same time as you, probably gave you a STD, probably had a baby on your ass.
Yep.
And
let me ask you guys something.
It's gross because they're bisexual. Like,
now I'm so happy I get to ask you guys this, because I remember being on, I avoid that toxic place like a plague, Clubhouse. I was on Clubhouse recently, and there was a conversation that was being had about the same thing, bisexuality, and whether or not women would be with a man that's bisexual or what have you. I don't even know how the conversation came up. That's how chaotic it tends to be over there. But anyway, so I literally just asked, is anybody in this room bisexual? First of all, is there anybody bisexual who can speak to the bisexual experience? Crickets. Okay, bet. So I was like, I'm pretty sure that just because somebody is bisexual doesn't mean that that their only interest is having both a man and a woman as a partner. I'm pretty sure that when bisexual people are in a relationship, it's probably a more meaningful relationship because they've not chosen you based on their sexual experience with you only, but also based on your personality. Because if they're equally attracted to men and women and they're with you, that speaks a lot about you. Like, you must be the fucking shit if somebody that's bisexual settles down with you. Am I wrong for feeling that way? Like, is that how it works?
I think it definitely is part of it, but also the social context is very important because with men, it's like bisexual men, they almost don't want it to be known that they sleep with men because that automatically cuts out a lot of the dating pool. With women, it's usually they're fetishized, and so like a threesome but it doesn't mean like they're cut out of the dating pool, which makes it a whole different thing. But also, like with men in general, our men are so bold, so forward, so like it's a socialization for us to be reaching out to the woman, to the man, to whatever, that you will always have men in your line. It does not matter. Like, if you are attracted to men will be on your line. And so that alone, like, is such a context to bring in, because with women, especially for me, and which I didn't realize until last year, my ADHD, like, it's so hard for me to reach out to people. like I'm gonna be honest, and like the expectation for me to do that when I've just never like really done that in my life. Like, and then when I do, like, I'm just a horrible texter. Like, all these things that I realized were my ADHD, like, are also like attributed to me just being a bad man, like of what a man is supposed to be.
Yeah, you are absolutely right. Like, in terms of just the difference, right? So for me, anytime I express or anytime I used to share with someone, especially a man, that I was bisexual, the first question I used to get was, can we have a threesome? And I was so like, sick. First of all, I told you I was bisexual. I didn't say that I wanted a threesome. Second of all, sure, can you bring a guy? Because I would love to have an MMF threesome. Like, that's always my response. Anytime a man has ever asked me for a threesome, I ask him if he can bring his boy. And you see the conversation change. And I'm like, what made you think that I wanted a threesome with two women? Like, why can't I have two guys?
Let me ask you guys something. I'm so glad you brought that up, Hez, because it was something that was in my heart to ask, but I was like, I will go based on the conversation. So there has remember I mentioned that I fantasized about threesomes before. I would more likely see myself in a threesome with 2 dudes, but 2 bisexual dudes.
Ooh.
I don't know. I've always wanted that for myself.
I like that.
This came up because one day I was minding my black ass business and I was scrolling on the interwebs. I don't know what site I was on, but all I saw was this video of these 2 black men. They were gorgeous. It was like a room full of dudes. Obviously they were gay, but they were making out and that shit was so hot. I was like,
First of all, gay and bisexual porn is the best porn there
Let's talk
is.
about it.
these dudes were so fine. I was like,
I know so many of my female friends said they watch it, and I was like, y'all really watch it? And I'm like,
it was so fucking hot. They were so fine. They took such good care of themselves. They clearly go to the gym. They were oiled up. They clearly had just gone to the barbershop, honey, and they were fine. That gorgeous smiles. And
gay
I didn't
and bisexual porn. Top tier.
I didn't know what I was, because I was minding my business. I was on like Instagram or some shit. And first I see just this room full of gorgeous men that are shirtless. It didn't even occur to me that they were attracted to each other. I'm just thinking, oh yes, honey. And then 2 of them looked at each other, smiled and kissed. And I was like, what the fuck? I was like, where do I find them? Like,
that's my shit right there. First of all, like, okay, so being open and honest, right? Because I'm 29 years old. I don't give a fuck what anybody says about what I say on this podcast.
Going over here.
I've had a threesome. It was with 2 men. It was with 2 straight men. It was the most boring fucking thing I've ever experienced.
I would not. First of all, sex with straight men is a fine line. You gonna do it with 2 of them? I would never.
It was like, okay, regular sex with this guy, regular sex with the other guy. Like
you just leave drained, I imagine.
And they were so focused on their own pleasure. And I'm like, I am the center of the universe, or I should be the center of this universe right here because I am the only woman in this room. Why are you just like interacting?
They probably were so nervous about looking at each other's
dicks. They were so afraid of accidentally touching each other. And I was like,
I would end that shit.
I was like, what the fuck? And then the next day, they were so excited. They thought it was the best thing. I was like, that was the most boring.
Because I couldn't. That's what I say. They're gonna brag to their boys about it. It don't even matter how the experience was. It could be the worst sex of their life, your life, everybody involved. And they're gonna be like, yeah, girl, yeah, we had this girl, da, 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 da. And that's what matters to them. That's really what matters to them.
Yes, because and the thing
lame.
is, like, if you hear the reactions to how straight men respond when they find out that I've had a threesome with 2 straight men, it's like, oh, it wasn't a threesome. It was a train. I'm like, first of all, you could have called it a train if I came at least once. Maybe I would let you call it a train, but I didn't. So why are we here? Why are we here? Anyway, and I was
stupid. Damn.
Granted, I was young.
Have you forgiven yourself for that? You probably were really mad at yourself for that for a long time.
A part of me is kind of proud that I did it because I made it. Like, I was the person who kind of took charge and was like, I want to do this thing, like, whatever. But I regret it because I was like, I did not enjoy it.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, from experience, right? My dream, and I'm already married, I'm in a monogamous relationship, so this might have to be just a fleeting dream. My dream is a bisexual threesome with bi men because I want to see that interaction. Like, there's nothing about that that's unattractive or I love bi men. So yeah, just the conversation. When I hear women say, "Oh, that's just a preference for me," but like, I can hear the disgust in your voice, girl. Yeah. It is homophobia. Like, just say that it is.
The crazy thing is literally it's just socialization. Like, it's literally all of us been taught to be disgusted by it. Like, right, for your pleasure. Straight women, most of the time, they have to like talk to like queer women, queer people to realize they're not actually having fun. Queer people have fun. Like,
I believe it.
Come on, like, I'd be like, straight people, are y'all okay? Like, actually,
we're not. All, like, it's very ghetto over here. It's very ghetto.
Y'all are having like less sex than like everybody, and I'm like, oh.
It's so ghetto over here. Like, it's so ghetto. Like,
That's another thing.
And then the few straight men that actually can put it down are whores. Okay, like you get their horse. I'm just gonna say it.
That's the thing that gets me is that hypersexuality is so like closely associated with bisexual people, but straight people refuse to acknowledge how hypersexual they are. Y'all be fucking everything that moves, but because I like two sexes,
Black people. So we as a community know how involved, like, even if we didn't want to be associated with sex, everybody already associates that with us. And so it's like something that's just always like readily available. So I don't know why you demonize somebody else for that when we're all Black.
Right.
Like,
and it's so funny to me. I've always found myself wondering why people who are allegedly straight are so obsessed with the sex lives of gay, straight, gay, bisexual. Like the first thing that comes to their mind is the way they have sex. And I'm like, y'all are not thinking of the fact that these people are having regular relationships just like us. They're cohabitating. Like there's so much going on in their lives outside of sex. But the first thing that comes to your mind is their sex lives. And I'm like, why? And I don't think I've never met a gay or bisexual person who gives a fuck what's going on in the straights, in the sex life of the straights.
That's what blows my mind about how straight people respond to bisexuality or homosexuality being portrayed in media. It's like, oh, my kids don't need to see two men kissing. Don't insert that in children's shows. Your kids have been watching Disney since birth, where people are making out constantly. Animated people are just making out all over the place. I was just gonna say, I'm
so glad you brought that up, because why are we okay with seeing two straight people kissing on TV but not two gay people? Because the reality is, and I wish I could remember, little kids, especially little girls, somewhere along the line, because of all the kissing and romance that shows up in our media, that's how they think they're supposed to show affection. I'll never forget.
Or you have people saying like, oh, my son has a little girlfriend, my daughter has a little boyfriend, or da-da-da-da-da. But it's, if you see two gay men kissing on TV, all of a sudden your child has been tainted and corrupted.
Why are they've been hypersexualizing kids. Right. You know, they've been doing it. How is it that you see two little kids and your first thought is what their kids would look like? What?
But also, like you said, Deidre, why is your first thought sex? Why is your first thought sex? Because when I see two straight people walking on the road, I don't think about how they fuck. I just be like, oh, a couple, cool. When I see two gay people walking on the street, I be like, oh, a couple, cool. Right. I don't be like, they must be fucking. Like, why does your mind go there?
They're always wondering. And it's like, honey, if you want to give it a try, but leave the rest of them alone. Leave people alone. Like, geez. I don't know.
It's funny also you brought up about like stumbling upon like gay and bisexual porn, because I used to like really like beat myself up about both of them, like which one I would watch more, like which one I'd be interested in more. But the way they dehumanize women in a lot of straight porn is so sad. Like I do like straight porn every now and then, but I remember one of my favorite types of like straight porn is like ones that like would look like it's directed by women, like sensual porn is very like, you know, like set the mood, very like like it's like slow jams, like kind of like an R&B movie, but like
an R&B movie. That's so cute.
No, porn directed by women or for women is like so super artistic, camera quality on point. The women are actually coming, by the way.
The women look beautiful. They look well cared for. It's not just some random girl just thrown on the bed. Like, but you know, I'm glad you brought that up, because even though, and I remember I guess he's my ex, whatever. My ex and I talking about this. He was very confused because I prefer lesbian porn. And he's like, but you're straight. I was like, yeah. He's like, and he was praying that I was bi and stuff.
And I've heard this like straight women like preferring lesbian porn.
He was praying that was some window into me possibly wanting to be with women. And I said, I don't enjoy straight porn because
only for his pleasure.
Exactly. And he was like, well, I just don't understand. He's like, you say you're not attracted to women, but you prefer to watch lesbian porn. I'm like, because women actually get off in lesbian porn. Like it's for women, because when you watch straight porn, all you see is some woman being slapped around a little bit, rammed
sucking dick for 30 minutes out of a 45-minute video.
She sucks dick the whole time. She's turned over. She's bent over. He's ramming into her. Yep. She's clearly faking it. She's not having a good time. And then he comes on her face.
And that's the saddest thing about it. Like, we're literally teaching children, we're teaching adolescents, we're teaching adults that for a man to have sex with women is literally to see them as an object. Like there's so many tweets, and I don't know if you've seen about how like literally men just be masturbating with women. Like that's literally it. Like they're masturbating. That's what I noticed. Every time I have sex with a woman, they're like, "Wow, like you actually like care." Like if I'm like, "This is sad." Like I'm like, what?
Let me tell you something. Okay,
yeah, we're not having great.
It's very ghetto over here. This guy that I hooked up with once a long time ago. He doesn't know that I know, and I'm never gonna say anything. Nobody's even gonna know who I'm talking about. But there was this guy that one of my friends was trying to hook me up with. We talked for a little bit. We texted. We hooked up once. That was probably like the best sex ever. I found out later that he's bi. I didn't find out from him. This is why I found out that he's bisexual. I was like, just come back. Like, let's just have a life together, please.
It adds up. It
was, oh my God. But I actually, and I feel bad for him actually, because she even found out by accident that he's bi. I think he's in the closet. I feel bad for him because I'm sure he chooses not to say anything because of what's going on in our community, because Black bi men are not safe in this community. Like gay men, they're obviously not safe, but at the very least they have somebody, you know what I mean?
Acceptable, by a Black woman, because it's not that they're pursuing them, they're not seeing them that
because they see them as
like they're being accessorized because it's helpful to have a gay man,
exactly,
like predatory straight man, and like,
but they at least have each other. But because he's clearly in the closet and he's bi, and I feel bad that he clearly has made a choice to remain closeted, which I understand why he's choosing to remain closeted, because it's like nobody's going to believe a straight Black man when he says, or a straight man period, but especially a straight Black man when he says he's genuinely attracted to men and women. And I'm like, the kind of sex we had, that man is attracted to women.
The wildest thing, I think a lot of men, like a lot of Black men would be willing to experiment, because like with men, it's like there's less of an expectation, and they just do all this manipulation to make women believe, that they want to be with them when they just want to have sex with them. And I'm like, you can't say that, because there's a whole culture around manipulation. And there's not even like a social acceptance for women to just want to have sex. Like they have to be like
emotionally attached to it and all this jazz.
Otherwise you're a whore. So it's like it's like with men, you like don't have to have any expectations at all. You could fucking dip, like, and that's like a Black man's dream, but they won't let themselves have that. So it's like
they won't. There are women who exist who don't want anything more than some dick. And I'm like, he's like, because I was trying to understand, why do men feel like they have to lie about their intentions? Why do men feel like they need to lie to get some booty? And he's like, well, because if we tell the truth, then y'all are gonna leave. And I'm like, so what? For every woman who wants a serious relationship, there's a woman who just wants some dick.
Find a hoe.
If you just be more honest.
Then it's about what their homeboys think. Because then if they're fucking a hoe, then it's she doesn't want anything more from you. Wow, like now you just like fucking thighs.
Yeah, and it's like, worry about you, my dude. Like, so I'm like, dude, a lot of men really have deluded themselves into thinking that all women want serious relationships. None of them are interested in anything casual. And it's like, no, bro, there's plenty of women who they just need a little company, a little companionship.
They don't even like you. They don't even like men. They like dick. They don't like men. Like,
we need, when we work on our merch, that needs to be one of the things. Like, I like dick, I don't like men.
And I had to realize that difference too, because like again, with my ADHD, like I get pursued a lot by men. Like I'd be turning down men every day, and I'm like, I don't like y'all. Like, I realize that I do not like y'all.
You know what's my problem though? I'm like the opposite. So I can fully recognize when a man is flirting with me. I feel comfortable like entering a pursuit with a man. A part of the reason why I have never openly dated a woman is because I do not ever catch on when a woman is fucking flirting with
all
me.
The time. All the time.
Listen to me. God. I have had a woman, and this is when I was single, come into my bed while I was sleeping, start like rubbing on my shoulder, trying to get me to like have sex with her. And I was just like, oh, I'm tired. I'm And then my issue on top of that is that I like femme women, right? I am a femme.
And
I
you're
like
both
femmes.
them. She'd be like, "You're so pretty. You're so
You're
pretty."
so pretty.
You think it's a potential bestie?
Yeah,
Like
because-
a potential bestie.
Yeah,
She's trying
because
to get some girl.
femmes are socialized to be pursued. So if two femmes like each other, we're just waiting for each other to like.
Exactly.
So
That makes
yeah.
a lot of sense.
When I went
Wow.
to college and I started openly talking about being bisexual, I literally had someone say, "Have you ever had sex with a woman?" And I'm like, "No." And she's like, "Well, you can't be bisexual because you've never actually tried it. So how do you know?" Obviously, that's a very elementary way to think because again, it doesn't have anything to do with sex. You can be attracted to someone and never know what that's like
Right.
sexually. So she was like, "Well, you've never had sex with a woman, so how do you know?" But the reason I hadn't done anything with women is because I could never fucking tell.
When they're trying to put
Time. And this is the same thing that I say is like when and this is not even just ADHD, but in general, when you have all this option just right there without you even trying, you're more likely to gravitate towards that. And women are always going to be pursued. Like men are obsessed with the idea of bagging a bitch in general. So they'll like do extra overtime. Why are you doing extra work? And then when it's like women like one of my best friends from high school, and we talk about this all the time, like all the different relationships we've been through. And she was in this relationship with another one of our friends back in high school for a really long time. And at the time, she couldn't even like be out because like she was afraid like he would get jealous, and he was like already jealous with her with women. And the way women like text and talk to each other, like even comment on Instagram pictures, "Oh my God, I love you so much, I'm gonna marry you," like, "Oh, you look so fucking good." Like imagine like an insecure boyfriend and he's seeing that shit and you like girls. Like, so that was already a problem. So then they broke up, like they dated for 3 years, and then she started like dating again. And it was just niggas on her body like crazy. And I kept asking her, like, "So when you gonna, with a girl?" And she's like, "I just never know when they're into me." And I'm like, "Girl, everybody's into you." Like everybody. Like
Yeah, it's so the other issue of it too is that straight people have the luxury of the assumption that everyone's straight, right? Bisexual and just queer people in general don't have that luxury. So sometimes you see a woman that you're attracted to and you can't just assume that she's also attracted to
That's
women.
fair, yeah.
You don't know how to open up that conversation. And another difficulty for me, so I really, really accepted that I was bi. Like I had known, but I fully accepted it when I was an undergrad. I had already started dating my now husband. My now husband's ex-girlfriend was also bisexual. She was openly bisexual. She actually cheated on him with her, who she claimed to be was her best friend, but was actually someone that she was involved with, right? So this was, he was obviously very hurt by this. This was like the worst possible fucking scenario for me to say,
like,
by the way.
Like, you represent.
I'm also
Damn. Is when you end up with somebody, whether it's sexually, romantically, platonically, you represent that when they haven't. So
right.
You haven't been friends with a bisexual person. You haven't dated a bisexual person. You've been hooked up with a bisexual person. Then all of a sudden, you're the spokesperson for bi people.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah.
So she became like that spokesperson for bi women, but also she perpetuated every fucking stereotype and not to throw shade at girl, she's living her best life now, but she was like hypersexual, she cheated, she did all this, so she assured him this person, like she broke every boundary that there was, right? So for the first year of my relationship, I never came out to him because in my mind I was like, you are automatically going to associate me with this person. And when I finally did come out to him, like I expressed that. I was like, don't think that I am going to like cheat on you with another, like it's not like that. And he actually responded to it well. Like we've never had like any major difficulties in our relationship because I've been bi. But for other people, there's that assumption that I'm not monogamous. And I'm like, I'm married. I'm monogamous. Like I don't just go find women and Steven's like, yeah, cool. Like that's not how it works. But that always was the assumption of like, oh, you out here hoeing because you like men and women. That means you got to it's like they think we have like a buffet.
Were you married when you told him, or
no? I told him probably like into like year 2 of our relationship, and then we got married like 4 years later. And then that was the other part of it too, right? Is that although I had fully accepted and discovered that I was bisexual, I was now in this monogamous relationship with a straight man and could not fully explore that bisexuality. So I've never openly dated a woman. I have never had like full-blown sex with a woman. So part of me is also like, I I want to experience that, but I would never try to I would never try to break a boundary with my monogamous partner just to kind of like live that fantasy.
Yeah.
So I mean, porn is where it's at though. Like, just bi porn, gay porn. That's what I get. I mean, you never know. I might be able to explore that in the future. I don't know, but
So can I ask you what did your husband think, and what does he think like now? Like, what do you think when you first told him, and what does he like think now of it? Or does he still like mention it?
so it was actually very interesting when I first told him, because he, like many of us, grew up in a very Christian household, Christian Black community. He had those conflicting views of homosexuality, which includes, in his mind, bisexuality. So his best friend is actually a gay woman. And as much as he loved her, when we first met, he had one of those mentalities of, I like gay people, I fuck with gay people, but because I'm Christian, I know where they're going, right? Like, I know what's going to happen to them.
Honey.
At the end.
So toxic.
We used to argue, like, I argued that man down because I was like, this is such a fucked up belief. How can you believe this? How can you believe this?
I always find myself wondering, why would God create people that are doomed to hell? Why, if you really believe in...
You ever see those signs like, if God hates people, why are they gay people? Why are they winning? Like, come on. I see Black queer people are the hardest people I see work ever in life. Because you have so much against you. Like, come on.
But also, like, doesn't the Bible just like listen to all the Judeo-Christian rhetoric, right? Does that not sound like a straight man screaming into the void to you? That's just... And
you're not open with the Bible. I'm not involved with that.
And I'm like, fair. We have Christian listeners. I'm not here to like get into anyone's beliefs. Y'all know what my beliefs are. I am sorry. I get that y'all have this belief of who wrote the Bible and how it's been passed down. But every time I hear Bible verses, especially as it relates to homophobia, misogyny, I'm like, this just sounds like a straight man yelling. Like, and y'all just eat this shit up. But anyway, so he was like, and it's what he was socialized to believe, right? Yeah. I'm very proud to report that he has evolved, like literally black and white from when we first started talking about it. But we had to have those conversations because deep down, I knew I was bisexual the whole time. So I was like, I cannot be with a person who thinks that I'm going to hell. Like, what the fuck? But a part of me also thought, because I grew up Christian, I grew up with a Pentecostal father. So the reason I had taken that long to fully accept bisexuality is because a part of me was like, I'm attracted to women. Oh my God, I am going to hell. Like, I am going to burn in. You know how crazy that is to think that you gonna fucking die because...
Yeah, I couldn't imagine. Oh my gosh.
I straight up thought I was going to hell. And it was funny because, like, you get older, you start having sexual desires, you start watching porn. I wouldn't watch porn with straight couples, right? I would watch like lesbian porn and bi porn and all that stuff, and then I would get done and be like, I am going to hell.
They fucked us up. They really fucked us up.
It's the worst. It is the absolute worst, which is why, like, I hate this whole, like, parents assuming that their kids are straight from the get-go, or just like you kind of they make it seem like the gay agenda, right, is this horrible thing. But how horrible do you think it is for you to possibly have a child who is queer and everything you push on them is straight, right? You assume they're going to get married to a man if they're a girl. You assume they're going to have a boyfriend. You assume this, you assume that. And the whole time your child, like, is in a room at night watching fucking lesbian porn because that's the only way they can get off. Like, it's insane. I wish people were more, like, conscious of that, because there are way more gay and bisexual people in your life.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I wanted to ask you guys, because our generation are the parents now, right? We're the grown-ups. We're the ones running the show now. What advice would you give to people who are raising children on how to be more inclusive? Because I know, like, for me, I'm very intentional, and I've talked about it on the show. I'm very intentional about not being too heteronormative when it comes to Dylan and the language I use. So anytime I've brought up like hypothetical like marriage or what have you with him, I always say things like, if you decide to have a wife or a husband, like I never make it just a one thing, like whatever type of person you choose to marry. And he's definitely like gotten in my ass and corrected me, like, I want a wife. And I'm like, okay. Like, and I remember him being like, why would I want a husband? I'm like, because some boys want husbands. Like,
who's Dylan?
My
Dylan
son.
is her son.
My son. So yeah, I have a 7-year-old. And so I'm very intentional about not being too like heteronormative. I don't want him to ever feel like whoever he is not welcome in this home. I don't know if that makes sense. But if by chance, I don't think he is, because he told me he wants a wife, so whatever, right? Like, but if by chance he is gay or bi, I don't want him to feel like he has to come out to me. You know what I mean? I didn't have to come out to my parents as straight. So I don't think gay people, bi people should have to come out to their family as gay, or, you know, I know it's a long way before that's normal in our community, but I'm like, my part to doing this is to make sure that he knows that whoever he is welcome in this home. And so what advice do you guys have for people who are raising children, how to be parents that make sure that they create and cultivate a home, a safe environment in that way? Because yeah, you can create safety by making sure there's locks and security systems, but how do you create that emotional safety for your queer children, if by chance your children are queer?
For me, I think one of the biggest things just in general with inclusivity is surrounding yourself with that inclusiveness. And so like all these like forms of media now that have all these different types of representation, and like all the people who've been so used to like such a heteronormative, like especially white like media, they're like, oh, they're doing too much, they're throwing too much diversity in one, and I'm like, this is how the real world is. Like, I be watching these shows and I'm like, y'all are like insane, because y'all will see like straight white people 1,000 times on television and then see one where there's a Black queer person and there's a disabled person and there's a Hispanic immigrant, like, and it's like, oh, it's too much, You surround yourself with those people, and like just being selective about who you allow your space with, especially when you are raising a child, like, because who you surround yourself with, especially now, like as you're collecting, like, you know, your friends and your loved ones that, you know, we're going to be the closest to you, those are going to be the closest to your child as well. So like, I think that's probably the most important part, because of course it starts with you, like having a very open mind about, you know, whatever you're going through, but also having somebody that your child can connect to if you cannot speak to a specific experience.
Right.
Yeah, I definitely agree. For example, one thing that I can bring up is like transphobia, right? So I remember reading somewhere a long time ago that the reason so many people are transphobic is because the majority of people do not know a trans person, right? They've never met a trans person. So their impression of trans people are what's portrayed in the media. And media prior to, like, let's say maybe the past year or two has been heavily transphobic, heavily stereotypical. And it's the same thing with like bisexuality and queerness, right? So Khaliq makes a good point in terms of like making sure your children are exposed. The other part of it is just making it open conversation, right? Like, I wish that there was room in my family to talk about things like sexuality outside of just outward displays of like homophobia and queerphobia, right? Yeah. My only ever impression of my family's views on gay people was homophobia. So I automatically knew that there was no safe space within my family to come out, to be open, to date women, to do any of that. So I think you don't have to like go above and beyond, right? Like, you don't have to sit your child down every day and be like, you know, gay people are cool. Like, you don't have to
I think that's unnecessary.
Yeah, but you do have to make sure that there are just there's space for that conversation, right? Like you said, you've already given him the impression that should that ever change in terms of his sexuality, he knows that there is a safe space in his home for him to come talk to his mom about it. And that is like a vast difference from what most queer people, especially in our age group, have had. We knew from the get-go, hell no, you ain't coming home and telling your Catholic mom and your Pentecostal dad that you fucking bi. They're gonna lose their shit. Like,
they're gonna lose it. You know what's funny? I feel like a good starting point would just be for one to not assume that your child don't assume your child's sexuality.
Don't assume your child.
I think that's a good start.
We need to have a whole episode about that. Like, what was your sexual awakening as a child? Like, for me, Queen Latifah in fucking Set It Off, I was like,
yo,
why is my heart rate? It wasn't even Cleo. It was Cleo's girlfriend. I was like, why is my heart
She was
racing?
fine though. She was fine.
as
I feel like
fuck.
she's every lesbian's dream. That's just my personal.
Well, first of all, Queen Latifah, I don't know if you ever are going to listen to this, but if you ask me to divorce that man right now, Dana, I will.
Dana is fine. Dana is fine. She's everything. Queen Latifah is everything.
But no,
But
like
Gaston was my dude. I loved me some Gaston when I was definitely one of them little basic blonde bitches in a cut talking about something so funny.
But I mean, this is what I want people to understand and to leave with, right? Is that sexuality is such a understood thing for the people who experience it, right? Like we've always known. There was no like, oh, I think I'll like women today. Oh, I think I like both. Like it just happens. And for people to still in 2022 have these like preconceived notions about things, especially bisexuality, like how old are we? There is too much education out there for you to be assuming that just because I like men and women means that I'm out here having a threesome every day. You know how exhausting threesomes are, first of all? We know that a lot of straight black men are homophobic, right? It's like an openly known problem in the black community. But we tend to assume that because straight black women have like gay male friends, or because we're just women, right? And we understand what it means to be marginalized, that we're incapable of displaying things like homophobia, biphobia, and transphobia when it hurts more when we perpetuate it because we are raising those children, right? We are the matriarchs of our community. So how can you, as someone who understands what it is to be marginalized, then have a son who ends up being gay or ends up being bisexual and perpetuate that type of phobia like in your household? Or how can you then look at a bisexual black man and say, I can't date you because in my mind I associate it with this, and this thing is like we need to check ourselves on that shit. Like y'all need to be having conversations about your biphobia because it is there. Like,
yeah, absolutely. And so for me, like I do my best to be a part of those conversations, and I don't know what else I can do, because for me, I don't force myself to be in conversations where people don't have an open mind. So even like last week when I was on Clubhouse and that conversation was coming up and I felt like nobody was really willing to just try to open their minds, I was like, I'm not doing this. Like, I'm not going to try to force you to see a perspective outside of your own. You know what I mean? I'm going to bring one up, but then you guys are sitting here and like just chasing your tails at this point. Y'all are not here.
But that's a part of it, right? Is like not participating in those spaces, not giving those people a mic.
I'm like
exactly, not giving them any attention.
So Khaliq, with that being said, tell us like where can we find you online? Where can our audience support you? Cause like I love your TikTok, y'all. He be talking about some real shit on there. Okay.
Y'all can find me at Bicon Living with a 0 for an O. And Khali.q, which is KHALI.q on Instagram. Those are my two biggest platforms for now. So yeah, shoot me a text if you ever see anything that you like.
Yeah, of course. So audience, definitely go support that. Thank you so much for like taking the time out. Y'all, he did his research. I emailed him and he actually went and listened to the shit first to make sure we wasn't on some wild shit. And then he was like,
yeah. And I also don't, I actually am starting to get into podcasts, but I was like, the first one I clicked on, it said men don't deserve mics. I was like, yeah. I was like,
yeah, we had to come out the gate fucking swinging.
Thrilled we are to have you. Like, hey, I said I've been talking about this episode for a while, and we were like, we cannot have this episode without there being a bi man, especially a bi man of color. And so when she was like, I found someone, he's on TikTok, I was like, yeah. And then when she told me that you did your research,
I want more bi men like to exist on the internet and exist in like in the public figure, because we just don't have that. Like, that's really what I set out to build out in the first. I just don't see it.
And I've posted multiple times, and I have a pretty decent platform. Like, I am looking for black, bisexual or pansexual men to have on this episode. I didn't get not one single motherfucking response. And you can't just go up to people. Like, there are people who I know are probably, bisexual or queer. I don't want to go up to them and say, hey, I think you're bi. You want to be on this podcast episode? Because one, I don't want to exploit you, right? Yep. I don't want to make you uncomfortable, but I also don't want to exploit your sexuality for a topic. So my next move was to like look up hashtags of like bisexual black men and see who's openly speaking about it. You, of all of the people who were using this hashtag, were the only black man who was openly bisexual who was talking about it. I was like, yo, why are there no platforms for this? Like, none. And you wonder why people aren't comfortable coming out, aren't comfortable speaking about their sexuality, especially black men. But this is why the only platforms that black men are given are the ones where they're allowed to be toxic.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's facts. And there's a lot of healing that's needed in our community before. Like there's so much that needs to just be gutted and thrown out. And we need to restart.
The bar isn't hell.
Yeah, it is.
But with that, you know, like, thank you for using your platform for that, because it's not necessarily the center of your platform, but the fact that you even created space for it means that there are black men and women who are following you who feel like, yo, like this person gave me this space to talk about this. So
I'm starting to see more pop up too. Like I'll send y'all some your way, like people who openly talk about it. And I think that's one thing I love about doing it is like before I was the person that people would talk about behind their back, like, oh, like he's bi, I heard he's bi, and I would be hearing this from my friends, and I'm like, that's so weird, like y'all know this, but nobody would talk to me about it. People would feel weird about asking about it, but when you make it so public that like it doesn't even matter whether they know or not, like you don't know, that's on you. It flips the control, like it feels
the
so
narrative,
much, then it's like then my narrative is being told by other people who are saying hush hush behind my back, and I'm like, that's weird.
You're literally saying that the sky is blue, friend. Like, what's up?
Like, oh, did you know she's bi? Yeah, I did. Facts. With that being said, I'm gonna wrap it up here because we could talk about this shit all day.
I can. This is probably our longest episode of the season, and I think so. We can't cut nothing out. We gotta leave it on. We can.
But with that being said, again, thank you so much for joining us, for having this conversation. Like, you are dope as fuck. Like, I hope you know you stuck with us. Like,
your family at this point.
Just that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
We need to go live together, Khaliq. Whenever
I would love that. I cannot wait to get this degree, like school. Oh my God, I can't.
Oh yeah. Yes. So like keep your head down, get your freedom, and once you're free, you let us know, because I know what that means.
I will.
We're going on.
Right.
Audience, if you are listening to this, I want to hear all of your thoughts. Unless they're homophobic, then you can get the fuck. I want to hear all of your thoughts. Use hashtag GoodUpTuesday on social media. Page, if you want to see all of the video of this episode, you know that the people in the VIP section, also known as our Patreon community,
and they heard it already too. They saw the video already.
They done saw this shit early. They done saw the full video. They heard the behind the scene. Like, they saw everything. So make sure that if you want that type of exclusive access and whatnot, and you want to keep the lights on in this bitch, you go to patreon.com/GoodUpPodcast. We are available on social media everywhere at GoodUpPod. You should know this by now. And with that being said, Deidre, tell the people them bye.
Bye.
Good Up is hosted and produced by Deidre Ritter and Heiza Quinones Ivory, and is a proud member of the Kickin' It family. Find us on all social media platforms at Good Up Pod. Use hashtag GoodUpTuesday to continue the conversation, and get access to exclusive bonus content at patreon.com/GoodUpPodcast.